All you need to buy a house is $27.40. Sounds impossible. After all, you work your ass off, earn an average salary, and by the end of the month, you're counting pennies. And you're not alone. 80% of people are stuck in this endless cycle. And so is Bob. All he can afford is a hot dog or Red Bull and some random snack once a day. Total, $27.40. $833 per month. $10,000 per year. For the first time, Bob stops panicking every time his phone buzzes with a bank notification. Because 10 grand isn't just money, it's breathing room. It's the moment your brain finally stops thinking about survival and starts thinking about opportunities. But his background counter never stops. $27.40 a day activated. So now we know $27.40 a day becomes about $10,000 a year. Bob could just keep saving, and in just 5 years, he'd have enough money for a down payment on a house. But Bob is impatient. So let's try to grow that money faster, in 1 year, for example. And by the end, we'll see the difference between simply saving and growing capital using real-world success stories. One night, he falls into a YouTube rabbit hole about vending machine businesses, and one story gets stuck in his head. In 2021, Andre Christian Collette started with 5 basic vending machines in local barbershops and warehouses. He gave the owners a 10% cut of the revenue, reinvested every dollar, and turned that into $50,000 in 1 year. Bob leans back in his chair. Wait, this is allowed? A few weeks later, Bob buys his first 4 machines. Congratulations! Of course, this isn't the passive income TikTok guys keep talking about. Bob spends his days driving across town, refilling machines with Snickers bars, and cleaning sticky dollar bill acceptors. But he remembers the main rule. Not a single dollar from this business goes toward a better lifestyle. Everything goes straight back into the system. 5th machine, 6th, 7th. Exactly 1 year later, Bob's network grows to 10 locations. His noisy little vending empire is now worth roughly $50,000. Bob is exhausted, but for the first time in his life, he owns something that keeps making money even while he sits down to eat. And the whole time, the background counter never stops ticking. The numbers in the corner update. And that's just one way $10,000 can grow your money. There are actually a lot more. I can make a separate video on that, but for now, let's just grow Bob's capital. The vending business works, but Bob is tired of hauling heavy boxes of Snickers bars, and his main goal is to buy a house.
Thank you.
So one night he starts browsing online forums and comes across the story of Craig Curelop. Craig bought his first property in Denver using an FHA loan with less than $20,000 down. He slept on a mattress behind a thin curtain in his own living room until his roommate simply covered the mortgage. They were handing him cash flow every single month while the property kept climbing in value. Over time, the strategy helped Craig build a real estate portfolio worth millions. He called it house hacking. Bob's eyes light up. Wait, I have 50 grand. I can do the exact same thing. I can buy the house. Bob liquidates the vending business for $50,000 and walks straight into the bank. And suddenly, the vibe changes. Because the financial system loves lending money to people who already have money. Instead of buying a normal house, Bob targets a duplex. 2 separate units, 2 separate entrances. Bob moves into Unit A. A young couple rents Unit B. No shared kitchen, no strangers microwaving fish at 1 a.m. It took him only 2 years and $27.40 per day. But let's do some math because there is one very interesting detail. Bob didn't actually buy a home. He bought control over someone else's monthly payments. While his tenants are living their chaotic little lives, they're slowly erasing Bob's debt. Mortgage and taxes and insurance, that's $1,600. Rent from Unit B, $1,800. The dynamic is almost offensive. The tenants don't just cover the property cost, they actually pay Bob an extra $200 every month on top of it. 5 years pass, 60 consecutive mortgage payments. 60 times Bob watches another piece of debt disappear. Meanwhile, the housing shortage keeps pushing property prices higher. The equity counter climbs, while the loan balance keeps shrinking. By year 5, the duplex reaches nearly $420,000 in market value. Bob pulls the trigger and sells. After paying off the remaining loan and closing costs, he walks away with roughly $250,000 in cash. If Bob had just kept saving that $27.40 a day, he'd only have about $50,000 by now, just enough to finally put a down payment on a house. But because he got started earlier, Bob is already sitting on $250,000 in cash. And suddenly, something clicks. A house is real. Ownership is real. So why stop here? Let's make $1 million. Then he discovers the story of Ronald Read and goes crazy. Turns out making $1 million when you're already at $250,000 is a lot easier than making your first $10,000. Ronald was a gas station attendant and janitor in Vermont. Old Toyota, safety pins holding his coat together. But when he died in 2014, his will revealed something mathematically impossible. Ronald left behind an $8 million fortune. He exploited a boring financial mechanism known as DRIP, Dividend Reinvestment Plan. Ronald's system was stupidly simple. He bought shares of boring, stable companies like Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble. Every quarter, those companies paid him a cash dividend, a small slice of their profit. Instead of spending that cash, Ronald's account automatically used it to buy fractions of new shares. Over 50 years, this tiny invisible snowball turned into an $8 million avalanche. Bob thinks Ronald started with pennies and it took him half a century, but I have $250,000. Bob moves his entire $250,000 into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Suddenly, 500 of the biggest companies in America are working for Bob. Apple, Microsoft, and Coca-Cola are now his unpaid employees. And remember Bob's stupid little daily rule? Neither did the counter. Every month, he still quietly deposits that $833 into the same investment account. Bob's money machine is now a two-headed monster. The economy crashes and recovers, politicians panic on TV. Bob completely ignores it. Bob does nothing. Time does the heavy lifting. 12 years later, Bob crosses the seven-figure mark. Bob is officially a millionaire. He stares at the 7 figures on his screen. The game is over. 17 years. A stupid little habit started all of this. But look at this. Even if Bob had done absolutely nothing else and simply kept putting away $27.40 a day, he still would have ended up with roughly $170,000 and he could finally afford a house. Instead, that same habit combined with smart decisions, ownership, and time turned into $1,115,000. The $27.40 rule didn't just build money, it bought freedom. What will you do with your first million? $27.40 a day. Your move.